Welcome to the Biscuit Book Club on Joy 620 WRJZ, featuring Marcy and Shelley. Today, conversation will build you up in the faith and encourage you to do what God has called you to do. Brought to you by Semper Fi Hauling. And now, let's go to the studio with Marcy.
Welcome to the Biscuit Book Club. We're serving up stories with Southern charm. I'm Shelley.
And I'm Marcy. And I would say grab your cup of coffee, but it's so hot here. So I'm going to say grab your cup of iced coffee or sweet tea and settle in as we chat with today's featured author. So today we're going to be talking later, Shelley. We're going to see if we can get Robin Jones Gunn on the phone. And I'm super excited about that because I don't know if you read growing up, but our girls have really enjoyed the Christy Miller series. And I loved that. I loved hearing Robin talk about why she started writing that series, because there's not a lot of great things that you want to pass along to your kids that are edifying. And so Robin really picked that up. She was involved with the youth group, and there was some girls in her youth group. They were on a camp out, and they were reading, and she was like, so what are you reading? And then when they told her, she's like, oh, that's kind of like questionable. And they said, well, then you write something. And I love it because she did. So she did. She said, okay, I'm going to start. And so that birthed a huge movement of the Christy Miller series. And then it was Christy and Todd. And then, they have just gone on and on. And I know that there's so many other young women who feel like they grew up with Christy Miller. And I just have loved the fact that, for sure, whatever Robin puts out, it is going to be something that you are going to feel good about reading, and you're going to feel good about asking or passing that along to other people. So I don't know if you had that experience at all about books. You have a daughter. It's not an easy thing to find.
It's not. And I love now that Robin is writing for those ladies that are grown women now. And she kind of switched gears, and she's writing for adult women now, and I love that.
Yeah, and she has actually lived quite an adventurous life, because she lived in Southern California, then she moved to Hawaii, and now she's living back in Southern California. So she definitely is a sand in her toes girl, but let's see if we can get her on the line. I hope she's home. She's probably out enjoying the waves, watching for dolphins.
Hello, this is Robin.
Hey, Robin. This is Marcy Seither, and
I'm Shelley Alfred.
Hi, Shelley. How are you guys?
Fine. We were just on the Biscuit Book Club, and we were talking about how much we have loved your books. And I know that you have a new one coming out, but before we talk about the books, I do want to let people know too. I don't know what took me so long to find this. I think there's just so many podcasts out there that sometimes you're like, oh, and you have a podcast, and you have a podcast. But you really have, I have to say, I listened to the podcast last night with Beth on it, Redmond. Beth Redmond.
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. It was so good. It was so good. I mean, I listened to the one about Elizabeth Newman, and I love Kashmir. I loved that one. But hearing Beth Redmond talk about her life with Matt Redmond was so empowering, and I loved it. It's the podcast Women Worth Knowing, and you have partnered with Cheryl Broderson, and I have to just put that plug out there, because if you are not a huge reader but you love hearing people's stories, that's a great resource for people to know, Women Worth Knowing. So anyway, I just had to get that out there because I just really enjoyed listening to her talk about her story. So Robin, I think the thing also I appreciate about your writing is that it's all about relations. All of your writing is relational. And so can you share a little bit about why relationships, especially relationships between women, are so valuable, just as much as they were when they were young as they are right now?
That's a really interesting thing to think about, because I realize that I see over the years how much friendships have formed me and how valuable my girlfriends have been at different stages of life. And to get to your point, I think it's because, sadly, my mother was not nurturing. My mom was not a close kind of mom. And so I guess I looked for that sort of closeness in other women. And when I found it, it was so rich and deep. And so, interestingly, it kind of flows through everything I write, so that I'm sharing about, based on really wonderful, sweet friendships I've experienced over the years, but also trying to nudge readers into a place where they think, okay, I can put out the effort to be a friend, and that will become a gift to both of us, because we need to be encouraged to build friendships. It doesn't always come naturally.
It doesn't, but I just think, too, that really is that's in our DNA. Like, God did create in us. He wanted relationship with us. And I wanted to highlight a little bit about the By the Sea book, which, I mean, you've had two. You have a book. When is your next book coming out, and what's the name of that one?
August 19th, 2025. The second book in the Suitcase Sisters collection comes out, and that's a novel. It is called Gelato at the Villa. And as you might guess from the title, the two best friends go finally on their big trip to Italy, take a cooking class in Tuscany, and they stay at a villa, and of course, they have lots of gelato. So, yeah, my editor said she thinks she gained 5 pounds just reading the book, so look out.
And I love the covers. They're just gorgeous.
I do, too.
But, so, please tell me that's not just, I saw that it was the Tea with Elephants was the first of two. So is this the second of two, or is this the second of more to come?
Second of more to come. The third one is finished, and so it's in the editing process. And each story, I wanted to take women who are different women in each book, but they go someplace in the world that changes them because they're away from their home and routine, and their friendship is what sort of led them to have this adventure together. And it's so true. When you travel, you start to think about your life differently, and you open up to the people you're traveling with. And in each story, these women see how God is working in their life in a new way, and just embrace whatever it is He has next for them.
Well, and it is kind of like a looking back, like, okay, you know what, that was important. Or I read the first part of the Tea with Elephants, and it was like, these are things that, as we are getting older, we're getting into our middle age years, our golden years. There's things that we have brought with us, we have packed with us, we have carried around with us. Like, our suitcase does not fit in the overhead bin anymore because of all the emotional baggage
I love that.
we are carrying with us. So pretty soon we need the roller bag, and then we need the one that fits on top of the bag. And so I just love the fact that this is about adventure, but these are really hard-hitting, because I think there's a lot of people who are really thinking about their life, thinking about how we fit in. What did we give our life to, and what did we never have good resolve? Like you mentioned with your mom, like, okay, so because that was true, how can I be a better friend? How can I make those connections? And I loved one of the devotions I read in your By the Sea was, or the poem was just also about how we need each other. And I just love that. I read the one about the surfer guys and the fact that you married one, and I was wondering, were you Christy Miller?
Well, not really, but I did grow up in Southern California and spent the summers at Newport Beach, and I had really wonderful friends that loved the Lord, and they prompted me to grow in my relationship with Jesus during that era when there's so much influence as a teenager of what, you're being pulled from every side. But my biggest influence was this group of Christian teenagers. And so that's a lot, the foundation in the Christy Miller books of taking Christy out of Wisconsin as a 14-year-old girl and putting her in Newport Beach, California, and she's faced with all these options. So who is she going to align herself with? And because it's the God lovers, the kids that really want to serve Jesus with their whole heart, that changes the trajectory of her life. And that was, I was Christy in that way too.
Yeah.
I love that.
Were you surprised by how beautiful that book was? I mean, that book By the Sea is absolutely stunning, and it just released. So if people don't know, I mean, people are always thinking that you're writing fiction, but that was actually really reflective. The poetry, I didn't know that you wrote poetry, but just the poem about the sun going down and disappearing over the cliff. Having watched a lot of sunsets when we lived in Oceanside, Carlsbad area, that totally captured that. And had you published poetry before or those kind of things?
No, but what I love about this hardback gift book By the Sea that Harvest House just put out is that I was given the freedom to create, what's in your heart? Just put it on paper and we'll see what we can do with it. I mean, isn't that a writer's dream?
Wow.
Right? So I had for years in my journal collected very privately poems and thoughts and stories and impressions. And I had this conversation with one of the editors at Harvest House that I had worked with years ago. We did some gift books for moms, and we did some other, I don't know, we just did various projects, but I'm talking like the 90s, really long time ago. And so she reached out to me and said, just tell me what you would love to put together. And I said, well, maybe a gift book. And she said, I follow your social media, and I know you lived in Hawaii for 10 years, and you have all these great pictures of the ocean and the beach and the sunsets, and you write these really interesting little short bits about your love for the sea. And what if you did a hardback gift book and it was focused on the ocean? And she came up with the title By the Sea. And then it was just, it was like making a patchwork quilt with friends, where you have all these pieces and you go, I don't know, where does this go? What do you think of this? So my editor was terrific and put all the pieces in where they should go. And then the hunt for the right pictures to go with it was a process, but we got there and captured just the right feel. I love how it turned out. So yeah, that came out By the Sea. And the subtitle is Glimpses of Eternity and Reflections of Simple Hope. That book came out just in May. And I just, like you said, Marcy, I've had so many sweet comments about it already that women saying, I got your book, I sat down, and it was like my blood pressure just went down. I was having this virtual moment at the beach. I could hear the ocean waves just reading the book.
Yeah.
But
well, and the pictures are
encouraging.
It's so stunning, the pictures. I mean, I seriously, when I was reading it, I just wanted to grab a seashell and just hold it up to my ear.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Robin, you've been writing for years, and what advice would you give a new aspiring writer that's just starting out?
Yeah, I think that this repeats over the years of the many writers I've known or when I've taught at writers' workshops, that the first step is to just begin and know that you don't know what you're doing, so that you just kind of find your way into it. And that may seem so simplified. Just start. However, there are so many that I talk to who have an idea, have a little inspiration, but fear starts to make all the decisions for them. Well, nobody will want to read it. Nobody will publish it. And they talk themselves out of even trying. So that's the very first step, is just try. And what I also have found to be foundational with everything I write, I always start with a prayer. I write out a prayer. So every book, and I've written over 100 books, so every book has a binder, a journal, and they're all lined up. And sometimes I'll start a binder, and it'll be 5 or 6 years before I pull that binder out again and actually write that book. But the very first page in each binder is a prayer of dedication, and I just commit the work to the Lord and surrender myself to Him and to the project, and pray for the readers, because I know there are times when I'll write something and a reader will come back years later and say, oh, I got to this part, and the Lord spoke to me directly. I cannot remember writing that part. If I do remember, I really didn't have in mind whatever it is that they got out of it. So I've seen God answer that prayer of I'll just be available to do the work and get started and try with all my, I don't know what I'm doing, feelings, and just let the Holy Spirit guide and lead. And it's pretty amazing. So that's so basic, but just try. A lot of writers have benefited tremendously from a writers' conference, as Marcy and I can both tell you. We have from Mount Hermon over the years. It's been a lifeline conference for us.
And you're going to be a keynoter at the Vision.
Yes, we're so excited.
Yeah.
So next March, I'll be back there and doing a major morning workshop on the spiritual life of a writer. But then also at ACFW, I'm doing a keynote, and that's in September in Springfield, Missouri. So the thing for beginning writers is to have that kind of commitment to, okay, I'm going to give this a try. I'm going to take this class. I'm going to sign up for this online program. I'm going to go to a conference. I'm going to try. I'm going to put my whole heart into it. And I'm going to dedicate it all to the Lord. It's not at all about me. It's what gift did He give me, and how is He asking me to use that gift? That's the starting point.
And I love what you said, that you fill up these binders as you have thoughts. And I do feel like so there's fear of failure, which I do think that's a big thing. But then also we have a false sense of urgency. And we don't really trust that God's timing might not be our timing. And I'm sure you maybe experienced this maybe once or 500 times.
500. Yes.
So, I mean, sometimes God's timing is faster or slower than what we anticipated. But I love the fact that when we have given it over to God's hands, that we can trust the timing. And we can trust the lessons that we learned. And I just remember one time you were talking about doing laundry with some gals, and I can't even remember where exactly you were, but that was just such a great example of, you know what, this is, I feel like the Lord gives us these whispers of like, hey, maybe this. And we put that into a little binder. We put it on the bookshelf of our heart, and then He breathes life into that, and also the timing. So where were you when that happened?
The laundry moment, or
the laundry moment?
It was a full circle, excuse me, because as a young woman, college student, I really wanted to be a missionary, and I thought that's what God was calling me to. I'd done some mission work. I had I worked for Corrie ten Boom way back when I was 20 and met her and was so inspired. And I worked also with Brother Andrew, and I smuggled Bibles into what was then the former Soviet Union. And so it was like, this is my life is going to be dedicated to this service. And I applied to go to be a full-time missionary. The opportunity that came up was for a laundry supervisor in Nairobi and Kenya. And I applied, and they turned me down. They said I didn't have the necessary skills. And when you're 22 years old and you think, I can't even wash clothes for Jesus in Africa, I am really not able to do anything significant for the kingdom. And it was this time in my life where it was being leveled, humbled, waiting on the Lord. And it was in that season that I met Ross, who's been my husband for, we're coming up on 50 years. And the process of just taking the next step, knowing that, okay, this is the man I'm to marry, and he's a youth pastor, so, okay, I'm going to teach the girls' Sunday school class. Okay, as you mentioned earlier, Marcy, now we're on a camping trip. These girls in the tent are reading all these books I don't think they should read. They're challenging me to write for them. Okay, and so that whole process of doing whatever the Lord puts right in front of you next, asking Him, trusting Him. So the full circle was that many years later, after all these Christy Miller books had been published, I was in England teaching at a writers' conference, and I met a young woman at lunch who had read my books, and her name was Wambura. I said, where are you from? She said, I'm from Nairobi, Kenya. I said, do you know what? When I was your age, I thought I was going to go there and be a laundry supervisor. She just thought that was so funny. But then she said, you did not need to come to Africa to wash our laundry. You sent your stories, and they washed our hearts. And then I realized, oh, the Lord's timing, His ways are so amazing, because the books became the missionaries and were multiplied millions of times over than just one person that I would have been, going somewhere. And just that full circle. And after that, I went to Kenya, and that was the motivation for writing Tea with Elephants, the first Suitcase Sister book, because Wambura and I had some really delightful adventures on a safari and staying in a hotel that was up in the treetops and looking down at the watering hole and watching the elephants come at sunset. And we were sitting there having tea with elephants. We knew that was going to be the title of the book. But when we were driving back to her house after being up on Mount Kenya, we went over a bridge, and there were women by the river washing clothes outside Nairobi. And she said, that's what you thought you were going to do, right? Get out and go say hi to that woman. You need to put your hands in her bucket, sudsy water. And I got out and I greeted her and said, I can't explain it, but it was always in my heart to wash laundry in Africa, because I thought that's how I could serve God. And she looked at me so funny. She goes, go ahead. And I kind of washed the clothes, and the other women were looking at me, and I just was crying, because it was that sweet thing of the Lord saying, look, I know you. This is not what you were so disappointed that you didn't get to serve me doing this, but I had something so different, so much better. And when I got back to the car, Wambura said, as we're driving down the road a few minutes later, she said, so that was not your bucket, was it? And it was so poignant of how many women I know spend their whole life putting their hands in the wrong bucket, or trying to get to the wrong bucket, trying to get to the river to wash clothes, that sense of, but this is what I'm supposed to do. And that full picture of, if you're trusting the Lord, He will fulfill His purpose for you. Just trust Him.
Wow.
Beautiful.
That is so powerful. And I think even that story, Robin, just carries over to the tea with elephants and gelato in the village, as far as like just feeling comfortable in your own skin and loving the life that God has put before you and being brave enough to take that step forward onto that path. So thank you so much for that. I just love that. So sometimes Shelley and I will talk about what we're baking in the kitchen. And for me, I did make blueberry lemon scones that I brought into the studio today, but a lot of times I'm baking biscuits. So Shelley, we wanted to find out, if you were to sit down with us and have biscuits, what would you want to put on your biscuit?
Ooh, real butter and honey.
Now, do you mix your butter and your honey together and then add some fresh nutmeg, or do you just do the butter, let it melt, and then drizzle it so that the honey is like dripping through the bread?
Okay, well, when you make some for me, Marcy, next time I see you, I will try it any way you recommend. However, if I was just having it on my own, I would get that butter on the warm biscuit and let it all melt in. And then just drizzle that honey. But I like your idea of adding a little spice to it, too.
Okay. Well, you know what? I'm going to see you at the Vision Christian Writers Conference. So I will. Last time I went, I made lemon curd, and I brought that for Ian because he's from England. But I will definitely bring some honey butter for you, Robin. No problems.
Oh, I'm so
I think we need to room with Marcy.
Yeah.
I know. Do we put our orders in now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Every day.
Yeah. So, well, thank you so much, Robin, for joining us on today's show of the Biscuit Book Club. We are so excited that you were here, and we're going to be back next week with more guest book stories, and of course, we probably will talk about biscuits.
Until then, keep reading and keep it cozy, y'all. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to today's Biscuit Book Club with Marcy and Shelley. Be listening next week at the same time for great encouragement and a challenge for what God has for your life on the Biscuit Book Club on Joy 620 WRJZ.